We are pleased to be joined on this episode by a pair of prolific writers. First up, we have the co-creator of the killer Image Comics horror series Hack Slash and Revival, an accomplished writer and artist who has also penned Money Shot, Grave Danger, as well as comic runs for properties like G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Masters of the Universe. He is Tim Seeley. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. We are also joined by the writer of the acclaimed comic book series Barbaric, The Plot, and Wasted Space, a novelist too, with books like Black Star Renegades, as well as penning the comic adaptations of things like Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, and Stranger Things. He is Michael Moreci. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, how's it going? Glad to be here.
Again, glad to have both you gentlemen. They have also written, loads of stuff for Marvel, DC, including cracks of characters like Superman, Batman, and Nightwing. And now they have a feature screenplay credit to their names with their new film Revealer, which is on Shudder as of June 23rd. And we're going to talk with them all about Revealer and more here.
Yeah, we're so excited to talk to you both. And I will say, Sean has been singing your praises for a while now. You all know he's a huge comic nerd. So I'm excited to dive into it with you as well. And how we usually start is we ask our guests, how did you get involved in your industry? What got you into storytelling or writing? Was there a piece of pop culture or a person in your life that maybe influenced you and got you hooked? So maybe we'll start with Tim.
I guess the big one for me is I grew up in the country. So I grew up like in the middle of nowhere and I had, no neighbor kids and stuff. So couldn't go anywhere on the weekends. It's just like in the country, which was lovely, but there wasn't a lot to do. So my dad was a huge movie fan and he also was, had been a comic reader as a kid. So all those boring country days were just spent with like action movies and horror movies. I was watching R-rated movies way before I probably should have, but and also just, comics and cartoons and stuff. So it was just like, I'm a Gen X kid. Like we were just those latchkey kind of left to entertain yourselves people. So yeah, just always was interested in specifically genre stuff. I think mostly, horror specifically as a genre in comics. So it's kind of the only thing I ever wanted to do. I had a brief moment where I thought about being a detective or an FBI profiler, but I settled on comics pretty early. And so I started out as an artist mostly, and then somehow that turned into like a full-time writing position with occasional dalliances in drawing.
People can't see, but I was nodding a lot in terms of our childhoods have a lot of similarities there. So I can definitely relate. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, it's weird. Tim and I are like, we often discover, Tim and I have been, really good friends for quite a while now. We often discover that we're like two sides to the same coin, just like weird little bizarro versions, little tweaks, where Tim is the country boy. I'm the city boy. I grew up in Chicago, been here, my whole life. And I did two things, really. I played sports and I watched movies. And I read too, as a reader too, although not as much as I watched. I watched, a obscene amount of movies. My parents were very liberal, like Tim's, in how much I was allowed to watch and what I was allowed to watch. I mean, I saw Halloween when I was 5. I saw Nightmare on Elm Street when I was like 5 to somewhere around there. And as a matter of fact, I think Friday the 13th was the first one I saw. I snuck and watched it with my older brother. And like Tim, my dad it's weird. My dad doesn't really love movies as much as he loves dubbing movies. Like
the video pirate, right? Like right. I was kind of obsessive. My dad too. Like just somebody at some point gave him a dubbed copy of a tape from HBO, and like it just set him on this path of like I must own more movies than the local video store.
Right. Yeah. As long as I don't sell it, I can't get in trouble with the FBI. Which I'm like, I don't think that's true.
Even had one of those VHS things where it would held back the tape. What was that stuff called that they put on there? It was supposed to like make it so you couldn't record it.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember what that was called, but yes. My dad bought like a scrambler for that on the back of a hunting magazine.
Yep. And you had to pop, to record, you had to pop a little something off of like, at least the beta. You had to,
the little plastic tabs. Yeah.
Yeah. You had to pop. Yep. Oh, Sean, you were in the game as well. So I was just the kid and, eventually.
It was called Macrovision. I couldn't remember. Now
Macrovision. Yep. Oh my goodness. I got to get some. I feel like I'm getting to that stage in my life where I'm like, I just got to start burning DVDs just for really no reason. And my dad burns them from VHS to DVD. He still to this day. I'm like, Dad, it's just the quality doesn't improve. It's still a VHS that we're watching. Like it's actually a little worse.
That's adorable.
He's always, coming over. He'll have his sleeve. Like he has like his like the 90s CD collection. You had the book where you flip through the book and you have the discs in there. That's what he's got. He's got all his movies in his little CD books. So anyway, so, I just, there's like a specific, comic origin story that's briefer, I guess, but less salient. Like the movie origin, the film origin, since we're, talking Revealer, is, I just love film and I wanted to make film. That's really wanted to do. I was the kid. It's funny. I got an Instagram message about 2 or 3 weeks ago from a guy I went to grade school with who discovered about Revealer. He sent this message. He's like, man, dude, you remember that time like your mom bought us tickets to see Pulp Fiction when we were like 15 years old? I was like, I do remember that. I remember dragging my friend. I never could remember which ones, but it was one of them was this guy. And I was like, I do remember that. I was that guy. I was like trying to drag anybody to go to the movies with me because I wanted to see the movies I read about in like Entertainment Weekly or Premiere or whatever. And I wanted to do it. And I did for a while, made shorts, went to film school, dropped out, fell out of it, was a PA for HBO. It was miserable, drove me away from the industry. And then, but still, writing always stuck with me. It's always what I've wanted to do. It's potentially all I'm really, truly good at doing. I think that and, youth sport coaching is really the only 2 things I'm really kind of suited for. And now that's it. Now I'm here.
So, Michael, for you then, writing, storytelling was kind of the key, and maybe the format or medium was something that could change shape because you were interested, it sounds like, more towards the film side, but then ended up in comics?
Yeah, I definitely was. Like, I really love film. And I just kind of, the longest version of it is that like being like a poor kid from the south side of Chicago. And the more I saw film through film school and through working as a PA and trying to make my own short films, I was like, there's just no way. It felt like so out of reach, in terms of just scope and money and all the luck and the proximity to California, which obviously I didn't have and didn't really ever want to go there. Although I love LA, but I just couldn't imagine, especially when I was like 22. All those things just it made it impossible to even dream that would happen. So, but I still love writing. That always stayed consistent. And after I, eventually found my way through college and grad school and all that, I was still writing the whole time. And eventually I got lucky and started writing comics, which I also love, and found success there. And it has more flexibility and it's more of like, I don't know, I guess a little more of a egalitarian system. You need less money, you need less connections, you need to be less connected to a specific location. Like there's a lot more benefits that allow you to do it. And that combined with loving comics, is what really got me going on that path.
And Tim, you mentioned you always knew it was the career for you besides potentially an FBI agent, which is really funny, by the way, since we just spent a good portion talking about pirating and, that whole FBI warning thing at the start of why did you not go the FBI route? I'm curious.
Oh, actually, I was supposed to do a test when I was in college and I smoked weed the night before. So I couldn't. That's true. I was supposed to go to the recruiter thing, and they, when I was standing in line, they're like, "If you had any drugs in the last 3 weeks," I was like, "Oh." So I couldn't. I had to bow out.
You said a walk of shame from there. Like, yeah. Oh, okay.
Yep. I was like, "Oh, well, there you go. I guess I'm." And then I just kind of, I probably don't have the politics for the FBI anyway. That was probably, or a cop. That was probably a better choice for me, just in general. But yeah, I was a comics guy for sure. I never wanted to work in movies. And then for a large part of my career, I would say I was right in not wanting to work for movies. But I think, this way that we did it with Revealer was like, oh, this is the way to do this. That fits with how I would want to do something anyway, I think.
Well, Michael mentioned zigzagging a bit and going into like even a PA interning with the HBO. Did you have formal schooling for writing, or you just kind of were self-taught from the jump?
I have a degree in graphic design. I have minored in journalism. So, and then my school didn't have a minor and they switched to a full whatever. But I did write but I was doing newspapers and stuff. And then, but never really, I never considered that as a career, but I have no formal training. I had one writing class, like creative writing class, my entire college career. So, and I was really always very like hesitant to do writing because I always kind of thought I couldn't do it, but it's just kind of one of those things. When you work in comics, like there's a very thin line from the idea that like you could, be a cartoonist, which is somebody who basically does the whole thing. And then the way Marvel and DC do things, which is here's a writer, here's an artist, here's an inker, here's a colorist. So the idea became more appealing to me as I went on, like, oh, I could just do all of this myself, which just means I had to learn how to type and do things that I didn't know how to do. I still don't really know how to type. I'm one of the worst typers you'll ever meet. I type for a job, but I'm terrible at it. But I still hunt and peck after 25 years doing this professionally. Whatever. For me, it was never like it wasn't something I considered seriously doing until, I think it wasn't until I was working at Devil's Due. I was drawing full time, and I was drawing G.I. Joe and like other licensed stuff, Dungeons and Dragons. And the frustration of dealing with licensors was making me be like, I got to fucking do something fun. So like I made a hack slash basically just to sort of do something that put in all the shit I couldn't do because, and obviously Hasbro's a toy company, so they don't want you putting ladies in lingerie shooting people in the face. So, but I created hack slash sort of get around that. And originally I was too scared to write it. I was going to have Robert Kirkman write it. He went on to be the Walking Dead guy, and he was too busy. So I wrote it myself, and I teamed up with Stefano Castelli. And then it was kind of like, oh, I kind of figured out how to do this, and just kind of went from there. Like, I never really like, I've still never taken any classes as a writer. I'm just kind of going through it at this point, just winging it and learning shit every day, I guess.
And how about you, Michael? What were some of your first kind of paid writing gigs?
Oh, let's see, paid.
Or even unpaid. What kind of got you your foot in the door?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So foot in the door. It's funny, so I went to grad school. I eventually kind of found my way, like in my, I don't know, when I was like 23, 20, somewhere around there. I finally finished college because I bounced around. Like I said, I was in film school. I left, went to another college, just went all over the place. I finally kind of found my way towards the end of my undergrad. And then I went right to grad school. And I went through like this intense between both, like a good 4 years of pure writing. And when I got through those programs, I was right on the cusp of like genre becoming an acceptable thing that you can do in grad schools. Like you couldn't then, like it was very specific, like no sci-fi, no adventure, no fantasy, no anything. Like the teachers just would not tolerate it because it just hadn't gotten to the point where it's at now, even before, even to any sort of respectability. So, and it's silly, and obviously I disagree with that, but that's just the way it was. So I went through these rigorous programs, and don't get me wrong, I learned a ton. I studied with MacArthur Fellows. I studied with Fulbright winners. I studied with remarkable teachers. I was very lucky, despite their aversion to genre. As soon as I got out, and I was actually living briefly in New York at the time, and this is all prose, and I remember like, I just want to go write something fun and different, and I want to write comics. And I remember telling that to my wife, and I immediately started going to comics. So I started writing these shorts, and the UK has a much better tradition of anthology comics. American comics starting to do it now, especially because of Kickstarter enables you to do it. But like the tradition is more over there, is way stronger. So I started to submit. I got some scripts accepted, and that's really what made me think like, oh, I can do this, like, because like Tim said, it's almost kind of mystifying because I can't draw. I was never able to draw. I'm not fast. I'm not good. So I was like, well, can you just write? And that was kind of my like education. Because even when I was reading comics, even through college, high school, I never really looked at the credits that much. I just read X-Men, or I read Spawn, or I read whatever. I didn't really pay attention to who was making them. It just never really dawned on me. So I had this education, this crash course of like, okay, I can do this. And this is a thing that people do, that they do write comics strictly as scripts. So I started getting small anthology work, which led to getting a graphic novel in the UK, which then eventually led to, becoming friends with Tim, and which led to Hoax Hunters, and which appeared in Hack Slash. And I think that was the biggest break of my career. I know that's the biggest break of my career. There's no doubt.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Well, you know that. There's no, yeah. You gave me my start. I mean, that was it. If I were to put go through the timeline of my career and put the tack in it, like that's it. Like the day that you're like, hey, you want to do this backup in Hack Slash? That's a slam dunk for me. That's where it began.
Can you talk a little bit more about how that came about?
I'm sure there was alcohol involved. I don't know.
Yes, there was. We were actually at a bar because the person who was supposed to do it, you just found out, and we're at a bar, as me, you, and Steve being Steve Seeley, Tim's brother, who I'm also good friends with. And we were like, you just found out that the person who was going to do the backup couldn't, for whatever reason, I don't remember. And you're like, damn, I really want a backup. And Steve and I are like, we'll do it, and Hoax Hunters Born, we came up with the idea for Hoax Hunters, which I don't know, that lasted like 20 issues or something like that. That went for a pretty good while. We came up with that in like 48 hours, maybe. We didn't have much time, and we were definitely drinking. You might not even remember the next day. Like, what? I agree.
Well, it's funny. That's one of the cool things about comics. I think that it's different than a lot of other creative fields, is how improv it is and how quickly things can be done, and sometimes have to be. So yeah, that totally tracks. I remember one of the things I always loved in comics was, especially creator owned comics, was people would like sort of have a story that they would like introduce something new. And we would always have like 4 extra pages a month to do stuff. So I don't remember the specifics. I don't remember who backed out. Was it Ryan Brown and Mike Costa or something? I don't remember. But whatever the case was, it was like had room. It's fun for me to do that kind of shit. Like to this day, I still try to just have people be able to do strips or pinups, or it's like you do this stuff long enough. It's kind of like being married for a long time. Like you have to start adding kinky sex stuff, sort of. You know, like you just have to like do things to keep the job interesting. So like, you know, whether it's like, yeah, doing backups or pinups or just trying to sort of challenge yourself and work with people. I think that's probably a big part of it too.
We got to the kinky sex stage really quick.
It's par for the course, really, but yeah. So
that was like 10 years ago. Just imagine everyone where we're at now.
Now what you're doing is illegal in most states. It sounds like that's what you moved into.
Yeah, we can't go to Florida. We can't.
You don't want to go there.
I mean, Mike's always like a lot of people who work in comics tend to be sort of like, you know, kind of browbeaten and kind of like afraid because the world's kind of shit on him. So, but Mike's always been like, yeah, we'll fucking do it. I don't know. We'll figure it out. And I've always, you know, always thought, well, that's a great attitude. And so like when the situation was, hey, I need somebody to do something. And you and Steve were like, we'll make it. Like, okay, cool. Let's do it. And that's the kind of one of the cool things about comics just in general is you can do that shit.
Yeah, I think that's part of what defined both of our careers. You know, it's funny because we are like, you know, you can joke about that a lot, but I think like you and I have like very much defined our careers by being like, we'll do it. We'll find a way. Like we're workhorses, you know, that's one of the things I will pat myself and you on the back about. You know, we work incredibly hard, but we don't really look at so we were talking about this recently, like, can you live life and understand life at the same time? We don't really do that with our writings. We just kind of do. We don't really think we do. And that enables us, I think, without the level of self-awareness. I mean, we are to some degree, we're not complete idiots, but like, you know, like we like are also like, hey, I'm not going to think, I'm going to do it. There's an opportunity. Okay, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to just figure out a way somehow and doing it pleasantly as well. I think we're always just so eager and so happy to be doing what we're doing that like something comes along. We're like, yeah, fuck it. Let's make it work. Okay, we'll do it. We'll figure out the way and we'll get there.
Yeah, you got a better attitude than a lot of people in that field. I dabbled in indie comics for about 5 years, and even Tim's like, how are you not jaded? He's asking you, his friend, for years. What's happened that you haven't been worn down yet? Speaking of, I have a question related to that. You both have created some amazing like IPs that are unique to your own, you know, I know there's more freedom there, but I do want to ask, as mentioned, you both had the good fortune to tackle like iconic characters with decades of stories and lore from Batman to Green Lantern to Flash. What are your approaches when given the task of bringing your own unique takes to well-established characters like that? How do you guys kind of go about that?
Yeah, I don't treat it like it's any different than anything else, really. I mean, the thing I found with Marvel DC is like I just know basically what they expect. And so it's like if they hire me to do Batman, I'm never going to be like, and then Batman fucks a priest, you know, like I never like tried to like get away with something because these are characters that belong to generations of people. And I respect and believe that they should be enjoyed by children. And so like, for me, it's always just, I know the rules. I'm not going to come in there and try to break something, you know, and I do think some people have that attitude in a lot of sort of creative circles where it's like, you know, I've got to make this mine. So I've got to break it and shit on it, which has worked for some people. Like, you know, obviously to some degree, and he's a genius, but that's to some degree Alan Moore's approach on most everything is I'm going to break this, right? So, but I mean, for me, it's always like, I'm going to tell a story with this character. But for me, the other side of that has always been, I know a lot of friends of mine who were like, I've always wanted to tell this story. And I don't have that for any of those characters, really, because I don't know. I've always wanted to tell the story, but it's like something I made up. But if DC comes to me and is like, hey, can you do a Flash story? I'm like, sure. But I have not been dying to do the Flash my whole life. I just haven't. There's really not too many that's true of, really. You know, like even He-Man, which I love wholeheartedly. When I started working, I was like, I still have to come up with a story. I don't have something sitting in my heart like I would for Revealer or Revival or Hack Slash, or like I do have those things because they're personal and they're part of me. But yeah, I just approach it as like, I make shit up. That's my job. I don't break your toys. And you want me to tell you a story about this character? I will learn as much as I can if I don't know it, and I will make something good. And it may not be high art. It may not be fucking great, but I'm not interested in breaking stuff. So, that's why I probably approach it as more like I'm just going to do you a good story. That's my job.
Tim's right. I mean, the alchemy I think is pretty simple. It's like when you get hired to do these things, like I do a ton of Star Wars. And like Tim, you asked me now, it's like, do I have a Star Wars story? I've written, I don't know how much Star Wars, a lot. I've written a lot of Star Wars. And if you ask me, like, do I have a Star Wars story? I absolutely do not. Like, I just have to think of it every time. And which is kind of funny because every time you get hired, and Tim could probably agree, it's like there's new parameters every time. So even if you have that story, you're probably not going to be able to use it. It's probably like they're going to just say no. But the alchemy is just like, take the thing for what it is. Like, if you don't know thoroughly, then find out, like, what is a Star Wars story? Like, I have that written down. For me, I'm like, this is what a Star Wars story is. And that's my guiding principle. So I take that and then I add as much of my own voice as I can, like reasonably. You can't do like what we did with Revealer or what I do with Barbaric or what Tim does with Money Shot. You can't go that far, but you can give a little bit because you don't want it to be, because then it's just, and I don't mean this in a denigrating way because I like fan fiction. As a matter of fact, that's how I got a job on Star Wars, because I started making fan fiction comics. But like, if it's just pure, if you're not putting any of your own character or your own voice, your own personality in it, it's just fan fiction. You're just like purely distilling the thing, whether it's Flash or Fantastic Four or Star Wars, Masters Universe, whatever. So it's just striking that balance. So it's you and your original idea, but like thoroughly protecting this like ember of light that is the core of what it is. Even Grant Morrison does it. Like when he does New X-Men, as radical as it is, it's still thoroughly X-Men. Like there's nothing, like he didn't break the X-Men. He just figured out a way to do it new.
Yeah, I always respect the writers that do that more myself personally, more than the ones that kind of like go in there and sort of decide to like adult it up or change it to fit some kind of view of themselves. And a lot of times that works great. And again, a lot of amazing work has been done that way in comics, but I have yet to find this sort of license thing where I'm like, yes, I've got the idea to break this thing and remake it in my own image, where it's like, how about I remake a genre in my own image and I'll do a story for myself and like figure out an in. What Mike said there is a big part of it is like, once you find the in, that's a big part of all this stuff is, finding what is the connection point for yourself. And hopefully you can find it in just about anything. Like, what is the thing that you can bring a perspective to? Like, is it some character's arc, or is it some relationship, or is it some aspect of the story or some location? And then you kind of build around that. Like, if you don't find it, it's really hard. And I've had jobs where I couldn't find it and I did it anyway. And I just stumbled around because I couldn't find that in, maybe the money was too good or something. But usually I don't get that far along that I take something if I don't have the in,
Yeah, there's nothing worse than that moment where you're on issue 3 and you're like, shit, I don't know what I'm doing.
I didn't have this,
Yeah, thought I did. I don't. I've been there.
Yeah, everybody has. Like it's the only way to sort of learn it is to have fucked it up, which is and for a lot of writers, that's the truth. It's just like like working as a writer is that weird thing where sooner or later you're going to do something that people are going to be like, what the fuck? And the only way for you to figure it, people see your mistakes, right? Like if you work at a office and you do like PR and marketing for a small Midwestern garage door firm, no one publicly sees those moments where you're like, oh, I didn't have this. In writing in this shit, everybody sees your fuck up.
Yeah. I always feel like it's like that moment in Memento where his memory snaps again and he's chasing some guy, he's, being shot at. And he's like, okay, what am I doing? I'm chasing this guy. And he gets shot at. He's like, nope, he's chasing me.
So I want to go back to something Tim said, and it really felt like a perfect segue into talking about Revealer, which you said, if I want to break something, I want to break a genre or, break some sort of concept in my own world, my own kind of like story. Was that kind of how Revealer came about? Did it start off initially as like you were going to write a screenplay, or was it more like, hey, I have this like general idea, I don't know what format it's going to take?
No, not that one. No, because Revealer is 100%. We have the chance to do a movie. So it started with basically Luke said, we could do a movie, but here is the requirements for this. And it was all based around the initial COVID lockdown. So it was, we can film something. Here's the rough budget we think we can hit. So obviously there's some restrictions. And then it was, and because of the Illinois State Film Board restrictions at the time, the restrictions were like basically no more than 2 people on screen at any given time, basically. If you were shooting inside, obviously a limit, even if you were outside. This is like July, August of 2020. So like, that's when people actually cared about COVID. I mean, and so the rule then was like, we have to come up with things that could fit those requirements. So like, there was no part of the idea, Mike and I both like came up with a list. We talked back and forth, like, here's some ideas of what we could do. And I think, I don't remember how many kind of rough concepts we came up with. Just a few, I think, right? Because we didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah, not many. I actually don't remember. I remember at least one specifically, but there might have been 1 or 2 more.
Yeah. So there were just rough concepts. And the thing that we kind of settled on was like, what if we do the apocalypse movie? And one other thing we talked about, I remember this distinctly, is we said, here's what we don't want to do. Here's genres we don't want to do. We feel like they're overdone. We're like, we don't want to do a ghost, like a haunted house movie. And we don't want to do a zombie movie. Because we felt like that's a sort of go-to for a certain kind of restriction, and we were like, we've seen it and we don't really have anything to add to it. And I don't know if there is anything to add to it. So, but the idea of doing like an apocalypse movie, but as seen from the people on the inside, obviously that was a little bit inspired by where we were with COVID at the time, feeling like you were watching the end of the world from your front window was serious, obviously part of that. And then we just kind of riffed on ideas to do it. We thought if we set it in the 80s, we would have access to, they wouldn't have cell phones. We thought that would be helpful. And we wanted them to sort of be unaware of what was going on outside. And then we would also have access to good music. That was a big part of it, I think. And also the satanic panic, which we thought, was something that Luke had lived through in a way that Mike and I didn't. He had evangelical parents, so he had to deal with the restrictions of the satanic panic in a way that I certainly didn't. My mom bought me the Motley Crue record and stuff. And she said, "Oh, the guy at the counter said it was satanic." So I said, "Okay." Like, I had a different experience than
real good then.
So, but I had a different experience with it. And so we figured we had like an in for all of those things. I think and that was the in, right? We're like, we can tell a story about religion. We can tell a story about friends. We can tell a story about working together. We can tell a story about the pandemic obliquely. There was all these things that was our in. And that allowed us, I think, to do something really quick because we needed to have it in how many days, Mike? 8?
8 days.
8 days. We had to have the screenplay done.
A couple of John Hughes is over here knocking out a screenplay that quick.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was your first screenplay. Is it your first one, or Michael? You probably had written before, given your interest in film, or maybe not. Is that
not in a long while? I'll tell you how long ago it had been. I had written a spec script for Heroes, the TV show, so that gives you an idea. Yeah. So that was a while. But yeah, I mean, I think there are certain things that we ended up breaking consciously or unconsciously, and maybe we can talk about that a bit because that digs into the actual filming of it and part of the writing too. But like Tim had said, like, I think neither one of us are too big of breaker of things, like I think we if you look at, for example, if you look at Revival, Tim's very, very excellent comic series. It's a high concept genre comic series. That's 47 issues, I believe.
It's 48 with the Chew crossover, but that doesn't.
Gotcha. Okay. I was close. But, for all the places that it goes, and it goes to some pretty wild places and there's, lots of ideas in it, but like very Stephen Kingian, I would say. It's always very earnest. Like Tim loves his characters and he loves presenting people as real people. He loves the relationships. He loves the relationships of the sisters who are the 2 leads and their father as well. There's always an earnestness to it. And that's something that I ascribe to as well. Like I've said this in different interviews, a broken record as it, but like I love Guillermo del Toro was probably my favorite artist, maybe ever, at least now. And he's earnest, everything he does, like he fully means and he fully believes. Like if he tells like the Crimson Peak, this gothic, romantic, quasi ghost story, that was woefully mismarketed. He's going to tell it what it is. He's going to wrap his arms around that story, around these characters, and he's going to love them and he's going to express them in a way that's utterly genuine. And I think that's something that's true for Tim and I as well. And I think when we were approaching Revealer, that was one of our goals, was to be true to the characters and true to the ideas and like true to what we were doing. And I think that's what comes across. I think that's something that like people have responded to, and they're saying like, wow, I didn't expect a movie about a peep show in the 80s apocalypse to have so much heart. And it's one of the greatest things that I ever hear, because it's like, yeah, it does have heart, I think. Like, maybe it's not a perfect, in fact, I know it's not a perfect movie. Like, I realize that, because I can say that from a scripting standpoint. There's things that I'm like, oh boy, I wish I had that ninth day, but like, I still love it. And I still have nothing, if nothing else, it does have heart. It does have soul. And we really are trying to convey real characters who are genuine,
One thing I'm curious about, because comics had one of the more rigid scripting formats, but you guys moved right into another medium of a very rigid scripting format. Was there anything that surprised you guys about screenwriting as opposed to writing in the comics field, or just writing in other mediums, prose and else otherwise?
I've said this a couple times. It's much easier to write a movie.
Yeah.
The
definitely.
format is so much less restrictive, because comics is 20 pages. Every page needs to have a structure that can be read, and also mostly has to end on some kind of cliffhanger, so you'll turn the next one, and every 20 pages has to have a cliffhanger, and and you have to describe things very, very clearly, like to the artist, because you're basically writing a script for one other person, and that's the writer and the artist. So I thought there's a lot of freedom in a screenplay, almost so much that I was worried that we might end up with some, because I was just like, oh my God, I got so much room. I can talk all this dialogue in it. But I think, and Mike and I talked about this, the brevity and the discipline of a comic script really helps when you have to write a movie in 8 days and you need to hit 90 pages, or 87 pages or whatever. Like, coming out of comics was extremely helpful, to the degree that I think producers should probably hire more comic book writers for films and TV, because we're really good at this.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, if you really look at the structure, and people have talked about this far more eloquently than me, but I will say, to Tim's point, there are so many wheels within wheels when writing a comic script. You kind of are breaking it to the 5-issue trade, and God forbid you're going like an ongoing, then it's like you're trying to think of like 20 issues, but let's say just your standard 5 to 6 issue arc. You're kind of breaking down the story to that, and then you're breaking it into issue, then you're breaking into page, and each page should have a rhythm. You don't want to have like 5 panels every single page. So you want to have a rhythm. You want to, open it up for the artist. So you have a splash page and whatever. So there's so much. Pacing is so important in a comic script, and it is in a movie too. It's a different kind of pacing, but it's definitely easier, and it's more liberating, because you can say, you don't have to describe things so much, because especially in the case of Revealer, because we didn't quite know where exactly we'd be filming or what it would be like. So we kind of already had the luxury of keeping it like, Sally does this or Angie does that, and maybe this is what'll happen, because we knew it'd be so restrictive, and we need flexibility of once we got there, things would certainly change. And they did, and they usually change for the better. But it's just freeing. It's just freeing to not have to worry about those wheels within the wheels, and just start and then end and go in between. I mean, I think Tim and I both have a pretty good grasp on a 3-act structure. We know the kind of rules, but we also, because of our experience, know how to circumvent the rules a little bit. And I think we did in this movie.
So it sounds like one of the biggest challenges was that 8-day constraint. Where did that come from? Why was it 8 days?
Because we needed to get it in front of the producers, essentially, and the location was the big part, right? We needed to get the set built, because we only had so much time. Like, if we were going to start filming, because we knew that we had this open space to film, that like the locations had to really be figured out, what this was going to be, how many locations we were going to have, because it was going to take us, was it like 17 days or something to build sets and everything? And so...
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, something like that. So, and because of COVID, you can only have so many people in a closed space building sets. So yeah, it was like all because of, hey, we can shoot this, we can do it, we can have a space if we nail this. That was kind of
right. And I don't even think it was 8 days. I think it was just as fast as possible. And I can't imagine being quicker than that. I don't know how.
Got it. So you had a bunch of kind of like resources, people lined up. And it was more like, okay, let's see what we can make happen between now and then.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously the people, we weren't in danger of COVID because we were sitting at our houses by ourselves. But the people that were going to be building sets and people were going to be building all that sort of stuff were going to be potentially exposed. So, and there was no vaccines or anything. So, it was like trying to make it easier for everyone else that was going to be involved, and get people cast, because we knew we had to have the characters set up so that we knew how many people were going to be coming in to audition. But also, if we hired those people, then they were going to have to, they were going to have to sit for 2 weeks in a room, right? Going back, like, it's weird to think about now because just like nobody cares and nobody treats this the way we probably should. But at the time, like we were following the rules because there were strict rules about what needed to be done. And that was everything for us. Like, we got to do this so, we don't potentially give an entire crew of people COVID.
Yeah. And we didn't have and that would be catastrophic. There was no money to sit, to pay for a hotel for an extra 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever it was. And what I've learned, and I feel like I've learned a lot, not all there is to know, but what I have learned about indie filmmaking is that what's so crazy about it, what's so manic about it is that like multiple things have to be happening at once, but they're all dependent on one another. Like, okay, well, we need to get the money, but in order to get the money, we need the location. And in order to get the location, we need the actor. And in order to get the actor, we need the money. But in order to get the money, it's like we need the script. Like, it's all this kind of like this weird, circular connectivity that all these things sort of need to happen at once, but all need to rely on like it's more of a domino, but like it just doesn't. It's so strange. It's hard. I mean, I'm sure you all know, like it's hard to describe, but it's like consecutive movements that all depend on each other, but can't happen with or without each other. And that was part of like the script. It's like, okay, we need this piece because we have this piece, and that piece needs to happen. Like, we were very fortunate, very, very fortunate that like as we progressed, all the pieces locked and aligned. We did get the cast, and we did get the COVID testing, and we did get the hotel and for this price, and we did get the money, and like all these, all the things that were just kind of like we threw these balls in the air, and miraculously they all got caught as they came down.
Yeah. Great metaphor for it. And the way that I was trying to think of it when we were, it looks like a like a recording, like a sound when you're doing like recording an album, and you have all those like little slides in front of you. Making the movie was like, move on, move on, move on, move on. It's just like, but they all got to go up. Sooner or later, they all got to hit the top, but you just got to get them all like slowly. Yeah. So that was sort of dictated our process for creating stuff, and like choosing how many characters, choosing location, knowing that we couldn't really have much in the way of sort of like gatherings of people. Like, we knew that. In a way, obviously having restrictions is kind of freeing, because to some degree it means you have to work within a framework. So if you make a decision, you don't doubt it, because you're pretty sure that was the only good decision. Right? It's not like you're like, oh, what if we had tried this? Like, well, no, that was the only way to do it. It was the best choice. Move on.
Yeah.
I don't want to burst Michael's bubble, but even if he bumps out of like ultra low budget, he's still going to find out that a lot of films still depend on all those dominoes falling together. We've been on some bigger stuff where it's still a crapshoot of one of the things falling through can torpedo the whole thing. But and we're not strangers to this. Paper Street's done more than a couple of two-handers in this pandemic for that same reason. You're like, oh, we can only have kind of two people. Let's find a single location idea. Let's mine some of the scripts we have and see what works best for that. So it makes sense. And you guys pulled it off. And knowing the 8-day thing just makes it all the more impressive. I agree with Tim's take that like the discipline of a comic writer, to use an analogy that maybe only Michael will get. I remember Kurt Warner saying when he came to the NFL, he had gotten so fast at arena football after getting rid of the ball so quickly that it was almost slower in the NFL for him the first couple of years. You guys are kind of the same way. Like, oh wait, this is slower and more free somehow than the field I'm used to.
It's almost like we don't want to tell anybody though, because it's like then
right. Let's keep this a secret. Nobody share this after this episode.
Because then we get blitzed, to go back to the Kurt Warner. We just get blitzed all day.
There you go.
So I want to ask a bit about the comic tie-in that you're also doing. As if, all that wasn't enough. You're also releasing a comic tie-in, which is kind of feels like an obvious thing for you, but maybe it wasn't so obvious at the time. Is that something that you had planned to do from the start, or did it just emerge naturally, after you got through those 8 days? You're like, what else can we do to further this story and the characters?
I think that was an idea that happened on set. I was there, and when I was there, I was texting a lot with Tim, continuously. And Luke too. We were all texting each other, and I think that's how it came up. We were like, man, we should do a comic. I think we were talking about that, and we were like, man, we got to do a Mondo release for the album, which I still would love to do because it's so perfect. It just kind of came up then. And I think we always knew we were going to do it. It took a while. Well, I shouldn't say it. It didn't take a while to get together because we just didn't work on it for that long. But I think we were waiting for the release to become concretized. And then once it did, and we knew what we can do, and the parameters, like then we kind of like ran and did a comic. But we already had Tim's art. We already had the cover because Tim. Wait, why did you do that art piece?
At some point, it was just like a pitch piece or something. I think or a poster idea. Like I don't know.
It was a poster, maybe.
Maybe. But I mean, it seems like a gimme, but I don't think we like comic adaptations of movies are sort of a thing, but like comic tie-ins for like an indie movie is not super common, right? But if your creators are comic artists, it seems like kind of stupid not to do it. So, but it allowed us to do like the ideas that we had that we couldn't shoot, we could put them in the comic. So the comic is just like a much bigger in some places and much deeper tie around to the movie. So, but it's also like a chance for us to, you know, then Mike could write one, I could write one, Luke could write one with his wife, Carrie. And like, it allowed us to, you know, get into the weeds and like have fun and like, I don't know, just jam, just do some fun stuff.
Yeah, no budget. I think, Tim, your story would cost to make as a film would be like 500 revealers. Very big budget. Yeah. That's what you do.
Yeah, it was just like, if we're going to do this, let's just go stupid with it. You know, like our movie is obviously, it's a small thing. It's about small moments. And it was like, well, I'm going to do the Jack Kirby revealer story. Like giant gods strapped to objects, kind of crazy shit. So.
I was also seeing that the net proceeds support the Brave Space Alliance, which is the first Black-led, trans-led LGBTQ plus center. That is a mouthful. Located in the south side of Chicago. So why was that an organization that you all chose to support in partnership with Vault?
We'd spoken to Cato and Shayna. I think granted, this is stuff is important to Tim and I. I can speak for myself. I'm not as educated on what is the best places to have given the proceeds, but I knew Cato and Shayna were. So, you know, turned to the experts, asked them, and they both unanimously were like, "Oh, this is the place to go." So, and I was glad you involved them, and they're both involved with the comic too. Like, the story I'm doing is an Angie story, although it's more Aaron Kuntz. Good Aaron Kuntz is more his story, to be totally frank, and he did a great job. And we involved Cato with that, and then Luke and Carrie's story, Shayna was involved with that as a Sally story. And then they're involved with this to be like, hey, you know, where should we go? What's the best place to do this? And then they were able to give us a really great place. And they've been awesome and super easy to work with. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that we're doing this.
No, that's awesome.
You know, I worked with a lot of creators that want to support worthy causes and give back in some way. And so I was like, I don't know how to do it, or I don't know which organization is the best one. I want to make sure the money actually goes towards affecting actual cause and has impact. So I can totally relate to, I like this, but I don't know how to do it. Help, you know, and partner with the right people that can find the other folks that are aligned towards a cause you support, and we'll actually see to it that the money gets put to good use.
We know to just ask questions now. Mike and I know we're old white guys, so if we don't get it, like, it's no shame. We just ask the right people and you know, just get out of the way. That's
exactly.
Hear, hear, says fellow old white guy.
Yeah. And we're also married, so we're used to just, you know, waiting instruction.
Right. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention they talked about the future of vinyl score done by frequent Paper Street collaborator and previous guest of this podcast, Alex Cuervo. Alex Cuervo knocked it out of the park again for this score. We'll probably talk about that more with Luke when we get into the weeds on the next episode. But yeah, Cuervo definitely grabbed that vibe you guys were looking for, I think, with that score.
The best.
Funny. So we got to talk about this a little when we did the commentary, but when we were working on the script, we were kicking around like a soundtrack because we're all big music people. But like the original sort of thought I had for the music was I'd written it in like all these Chicago area 80s punk bands, like Big Black and stuff like that. Like, and in fact, the original dance that Cato does was to She's a Model, I think, by Kraftwerk. No, by Big Black, the Big Black version. And so like the original aesthetic in my head was not sort of synth, even though I love that stuff, was not the sort of synthy John Carpenter gunship kind of music. So right. So I was thinking of it as like a more of a like sort of gritty, sort of punky Chicago garage rock kind of thing. And then when Luke kind of did his thing, he's like, oh yeah, we're getting gunship for this. Like, oh, well, shit, that's great. I love that band, but I wasn't thinking that.
No, I know you had the Jack Kirby version in your head, but then Luke said, we don't have $100,000 for all those song rights. I'm pretty sure I know the end of that story.
You're right. Well, I feel like we could have got a Big Black song. Steve Albini lives here, right?
Sure, yeah. I have no doubt that some locals you could certainly with Sweet Talk. A lot of times you can just sell them on the movie and the idea and being local and all that, and they'll play ball, but it still adds up in the end. So I'm sure that was a factor.
I mean, assuming they have all the recording rights.
That too, yeah. Some of these bands don't even have their material.
Yeah.
But Alex doing that sort of more of a Carpenter thing, which I mean, They Live is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I have every John Carpenter soundtrack there is. But I didn't think of it that way, and I thought it was interesting to see Luke be like, "I'm going all in on that. I'm going in with the bisexual lighting and the synthwave and and it works so well that I have trouble seeing the original thought in the original sort of. And I remember that one day, Luke, Mike, we were on the phone, all three of us, and we were like picking songs, and I was just like grabbing songs out of my brain repertoire, and we were texting them to each other, just like we're, even though we knew we weren't going to get some of these, we're just like, oh, this is what we want it to feel like,
Right. Yeah, we definitely had something specific in mind. But yeah, I can only reinforce what Tim said. I mean, there's something almost sort of dreamlike about Alec's score, which I love because, anybody who watches the film, there's a pretty big case to be made that you enter a fantasy at some point. I don't want to spoil too much, but if anybody's seen it, they know. And if you do watch it, I don't think it gives anything away, if you're hearing this beforehand, but like you get this sense of like, because of the synth wave, and that's kind of what synth does, at least for me. It's evocative, it's a feeling, it's an emotion, and I feel like that gives a sense of like again, that dreaminess, like the Stranger Things captures that very well too. And I think it's not only so perfect for the time, but it's also so perfect for what is happening. It kind of brings what is subtle and latent in the movie to the fore just enough. So especially on repeat viewings, I think it kind of like pushes forward this kind of what's happening beneath the surface really, really well. And it gives the movie a feel, and I think that's something that like is so tremendous about it, that like it is a movie about these characters, like we said, they're like really genuine and they're earnest and they're having these small moments. They're also big moments for them personally. And it's a very feels movie, and the soundtrack just pushes all these things in this miraculous way. And then like Tim, I just can't see it any other way now that I've experienced it.
Right. I hope you guys collaborate and just like put out a Spotify list of like what would be the soundtrack in the Kirby $100 million version, so we can get the music that would have inspired this movie. I'm
looking for it now. I can see some of the ones that we had picked on here. I just went through our emails about, you have some of them. I don't think I have the whole thing, but it was a lot of text back and forth. But
well, it's funny because there's a moment that's kind of doesn't quite, I mean, I guess it could fit because you don't really know what Angie is dancing to. But when Bishop is his real name, Ray, when Ray is like, dancing to that Dennis drill music shit, that's because the song was supposed to be from this original back and forth. It was supposed to be something a lot. I think it was what Tim said. I think actually it was the song.
Big Black. Yeah.
It was Big Black. Yeah, I think so. So it doesn't quite align. It doesn't not work, but like he said that as a response to that.
Yeah, which is kind of funny.
We're going to segue into the Rapid Fire 15, as we explained to them off the air, is a bit like the Proust questionnaire, but just with a genre bend to it. A lot of like, what's your favorite movies and music and stuff like that, just to get to know you a little bit better. We've appreciated all the answers so far about Revealer and your backgrounds, but this is more like, what are your tastes? You're going to put yourself out there. What kind of stuff do you like? So you guys are good. We'll jump right into that.
Yeah. Do you want to pick one person that answers first every time?
Mike, would you like to be
who's
first?
Faster? Who's quick on their feet? Yeah. Okay. You can always pass.
Tim was quicker there. Now he's quicker. He's quicker to throw me under the bus.
Awesome. So first question, what movie do you think you've seen most in your entire life?
Empire Strikes Back.
Good one. Mine is the Masters of the Universe movie from 1987.
Yeah. Seen that plenty of times myself.
Yeah.
What is the first film that really scared you, maybe gave you nightmares, or just really stuck with you from an early age? Like, is there one that sticks out as the first time you truly were terrified?
Oh, yes. House. Why House? I don't know. I had already seen Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and House scared the shit out of me. And I watched it on House. We all know House is great. House is ridiculous. I don't know why House terrified me when I was young, but House.
It's a weird monster.
It does. Yeah. House messed me up, man. I don't know why.
That weird, creepy fat lady is pretty unsettling. I'll give you that one.
I'll call George Wendt that.
And then when I was a kid, I saw the first Nightmare on Elm Street like too early. I think I was like 9 or 10, and fucked me up pretty good. But I think I was more scared of what I thought I saw than the movie. I remember the Johnny Depp being dragged across the ceiling thing, like much more frightening than the actual film.
Yeah, the first kill, the girlfriend that gets dragged across.
Yeah.
What's her name? Yeah, her. Yeah, that one. I agree. That one was one that really stuck with me. I thought that was more scary than when I actually saw Freddy. I found it less scary. That was more funny.
Yeah.
All right, next one. What is your favorite Universal monster or Universal monster movie?
Whoa, this is such a great question.
I feel like there's a hint in that room, maybe.
Oh yeah, good old Gilman. It's funny. So Universal monsters are my favorite thing of all time, and I would actually say, as much as I love the design of the creature the most, I love it. Frankenstein's actually my favorite. That franchise, you just can't beat it. What are you gonna do? Boris, Colin Clive. I mean, there's so much great stuff. James Whale, the two, and even it's funny. We talk Frankenstein, and it was just rapid, but I'm gonna go real fast. We talk about Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein a lot. Son of Frankenstein is fucking awesome. Ghost of Frankenstein, like there's like 5 legit really good movies in the Frankenstein series, whatever you want to call it, so House of Frankenstein is pretty good. They are rock solid. So Frankenstein.
It's a good choice. I would say either Gilman or Claude Rains' Invisible Man. Those are my two favorites. Because that movie's great, and he's so good in that movie.
Such a dick. I love him.
He reminds me kind of the Skeletor in the Filmation cartoon, because he's like supposed to be evil, but he's just kind of a jerk. That's Claude Rains' Invisible Man. He's just kind of a douchebag. So I like that character anyway, but yeah, that version is awesome.
Right? Michael may have tipped his hand with this next one, but who would you each say is your all-time favorite director?
Oh, it's Del Toro. I can kind of, weave in and out of like Scorsese, Kubrick, maybe Hitchcock. There's a few others, Paul Thomas Anderson. Obviously, there's a lot of like solid directors there, but really, if I were to, go on the desert island and take one director with me, I'm going with Del Toro, not physically with me, but his movies. Although I would take
he'd be in my top 5 of just talk my ear off on the island too. I'll be honest.
Yes, I would, if he'd come,
John Carpenter for me. That's my
no hesitation.
Quality answers.
All right. What is your favorite novel, novella, short story, insert form of prose here of Stephen King?
Salem's Lot.
I haven't actually read much Stephen King. I'm terrible at this one.
But make a movie adaptation too.
Oh man, I did like. What was the fun? I actually liked a weird one of his that everybody's like, what? It was like a crime novel. It was like Funland or something. What was that?
Yeah, it's Joyland.
Joyland. I really like Joyland. It's a later Stephen King novel, but yeah, I actually suck at Stephen King. I actually didn't grow up on it when I wrote Revival. Everybody's like, oh, Stephen King. It's like, oh no, I actually didn't. I've never read any Stephen King books. So then I did. Then I read a bunch of them because I was like, I don't want to be that guy. But yes.
And then he wrote a novel named Revival.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is his best late stage. And it's nothing. There's no connection to yours. But that's definitely best late stage King, I think.
Yeah.
So what is your all-time favorite comic book storyline or story arc? Not one that either of you have written, but what would you list as maybe your favorite one?
Oh, Preacher. It's so foul, but also has a tremendous amount of heart. I think that's like my writing philosophy is the dumpster of life, but also a lot of heart.
That's a good one. Alan Moore Swamp Thing or Grant Morrison JLA? One of the two of those.
Good ones.
Nice answers for sure.
I'm impressed at the speed. That was a tough question. All right, so maybe this next one will throw you for a loop. Is there a particular character or a book that you've wanted to write for that you haven't had a chance to? You've already done it for a lot of impressive legends of the comic space, but is there one that you haven't had that chance to? And if you'd be just absolutely over the moon if you were asked to?
Yeah, okay. So there's a double answer. So I would say Swamp Thing, but Swamp Thing has had now so many good runs that I don't know what you do with Swamp Thing anymore. So I'd have to put that aside. I've always wanted to write the Fantastic Four. It'll never happen. Marvel will never let me touch the Fantastic Four, but I'd like to. Yeah,
they'd be hard. So hard. Let's see. I have gotten to do pretty much everything, but I never have written the Hulk, and that seems like I could do something with the Hulk. I always used to say Spider-Man, but I just did a Spider-Man thing last month, so now it wasn't that long, but I did it, and now I can scratch it off. So.
So shifting gears, do you guys have a favorite concert you've attended or maybe a memorable concert experience that comes to mind?
Every time I've seen Pearl Jam.
Yeah, that's a good one. The first time I saw Nick Cave, I would say a couple years, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Skeleton Tree tour. And it was like very emotional and it was powerful. And he crawled across the stage and it was great.
Nice. That's my first time seeing him was that same tour at the Greek Theater here. And been a long time fan. He was awesome to see.
Yeah. Much more funny and active than you think a morose suit goth like him would be. But he looks like he's having fun, which you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I always got that impression. I've never seen him live, only videos of his concerts. And yeah, it's like you hear the music and you see the man and there's a little bit of a like discordant reality there. So another question on the same lines of music. Do you have a go-to karaoke song? And if you don't do karaoke, maybe what would you kind of get behind if you had to?
I definitely have one. Mike, you got one?
I would probably be a Motley Crue song, to be honest.
Piece of Your Action, I can see it rocking out a little bit.
Yeah, it probably, yeah, if we're going deep cut, you know.
They're properly satanic, according to Mama Tim.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I love the Crew.
Speaking of satanic, I always do Mother by Danzig. I have done it for 25 years. And it never gets any better. It's always good, but I always commit. And yeah.
It's true. I've seen it multiple times. Yes. The commitment is real.
That's it. You just got to be entertaining. You don't have to be good, but you got to commit.
Just got to own it.
Yep.
In a similar vein, what would be your walk-up music? So say you're coming out for a TED Talk to talk comics, say you're coming out to fight somebody in a boxing ring, or maybe you're a baseball player, anything like that. What's your walkout entrance music?
I'd probably want to play like some sort of head game and like have like Smash Mouth or something like that. What's that? All-Star? Probably all Smash Mouth's All-Star.
Really turn the crowd against you from Jump Street. Gotcha.
Exactly. They never see you coming.
Mountain Shrek cosplay for us all.
Exactly.
I'm going to do Cardi B's Debbie AP with Megan Thee Stallion. I'm going to rock that one out. I think I'd be a sexy Debbie AP.
Nice.
Different line of question now. What is a destination, like city, country, region, whatever, that's on your bucket list to travel to?
Geez. There's quite a few. And I love traveling. I think where I'd really like to go. So there's you can take this really cool train tour across Alaska, and you make these stops and you kind of go for days, do these like adventures. I like doing kind of adventure hiking, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd like to get into Alaska wilds a little bit.
I did Alaska once on a cruise. That's a
nice.
fucking place. It's a alien land. It doesn't look like anything else. I've been to a lot of Europe, but I've never been to Spain. So I'd like to do Spain. I'd like to go to Madrid because I really liked Rome and I really liked Florence, and I was in Italy, and I really liked Germany. I really liked England, but I like France, but I never got to go to Spain. So.
All right, Three Dog Night. What is your most prized piece of memorabilia, or maybe your favorite trinket or nerdy item you guys possess? Hold on, audio podcast, but Tim's reaching for something.
No, I got to turn the light on because it was getting dim in here. That's all. I don't have my. I got some shit. But go ahead, Mike.
Oh man, yeah, I also have some shit. I've been lucky to collect some pretty cool shit. I'm like looking around. You know, I'll show this because I'm so grateful about this because it's so amazing. So I did this series called Waste of Space, and this is one of the characters, Legion, this guy right here. And somebody made this. Like this is a custom that this guy who I ran to a convention, he made this huge thing. And this thing is huge and it's beautiful. And this guy just made this. And I was like, he came to this convention. He's like, hey man, I'm making this Legion. And you know, people say stuff like this. Tim can verify. You know, like, and you're like, yeah, okay. You know, you're making this thing. Okay, sure. And he's like, I'm gonna send it to you, man. It's gonna be awesome. You know, I can't wait to share it to you. I love Waste of Space. And I was like, hey, I love your enthusiasm. Thank you. You know, and sure enough, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months later, he's like reached out to me. He's like, I got it. I got the Legion. Where can I send it? And I got this thing in the mail, and it's just a huge, crazy thing that designed by Hayden Sherman, the artist, him and I did 25 issues, just the same creative team, which is a rare thing. Very lucky about, grateful for that. But yeah, my big old goofy Legion, which is, I shouldn't say goofy because this thing is gorgeous, but the design is goofy. And I love it.
Yeah,
you've vamped long enough for Tim to have a really good answer here.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Well, that's one part of it is do this long enough. Like you travel to a bunch of cons, go to other places. So all the sort of nerd shit that you want, you usually end up being able to get it, But I'll go with this one. When I was a kid, my grandma bought me this plaster Spider-Man, and then I would paint it all the time with shitty paints and just like fucked it up for years. And finally, when I was 5, my dad took it and painted it, and he fixed it, and I still have it, and it sits on my desk. There you go. My Spider-Man painted by my dad that I got when I was like 3 years old.
Oh, that's nice.
I love that you both chose something that's more like personal and not so much about like, oh, this is like an ultra rare edition of something or it's signed by whoever. It's more like there was some sort of a like personal connection. And I find those are the things that ultimately like have the most value in our hearts.
Oh.
The thing is, if you go to enough comic conventions, like both Mike and I have, all the like little nerd shit, it's not that rare to you because you're like, you've seen every kind of action figure that exists and every piece of original art.
Weird ass knockoffs.
Everything. And then con money isn't real money. So you're just like, oh, I've got this extra $200 that I made doing this thing. I guess I can just buy this thing. And then you regret it later, but you never counted the money and it never went in your account. So it's not real, So yeah, that's why you end up with a lot of stuff. Like that's why Mike and I both have these shelves. I mean, like here's my full of shit everywhere office. So that's why.
Yep.
All right. Switching gears again. What is the best Chicago movie? The movie that best represents Chicago, or to you, it's like that's a Chicago movie.
Ooh.
It could be the movie Chicago. I don't want to.
For sure, not the movie Chicago.
I'm sure they shot that in Chicago.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. It's probably shot in like Vancouver.
I'll say my favorite and probably the best. I have a nostalgic soft spot because I watched it a ton when I was a kid for Running Scared, the Gregory Hines, Billy Crystal movie,
Nice.
which is fantastic. But I don't know, probably, I guess The Untouchables. I feel so quintessential Chicago. I'm sure I'm missing something where there's also,
Blues Brothers, Ferris
Blues
Bueller's Day Off.
Brothers.
Yeah, and everybody says Blues Brothers. That's what usually people say.
And I go running scared. The Gregory Hines classic. Come on, guys.
Come on, guys. I was going to say Child's Play, which is my favorite Chicago movie.
Candyman.
Yeah, Child's Play takes place partly downtown and then takes place over in Gold Coast there. An honorary mention, if you've ever seen the movie Widows, I think it came out like maybe 3 years.
Yeah,
yes.
Steve McQueen movie.
Yeah, it has this sequence in there where the alderman, the Colin Farrell character, is doing this speech in front of a bunch of like he's in the rough neighborhood. He's talking to these people, and then he gets in his limo and he drives, and they just show the background. They just show the window outside, and the city changes around him, and then he goes to his house, mansion, like 3 blocks over, and they just show you the whole thing, and it's the most Chicago moment in any film ever made.
What's crazy, I've had a conversation with someone like that who's like kind of questioning the validity of it, and I was like, no, that's how it is. The city just like changes on a dime. Yep,
and it's built some degree to separate people, but it's also built sort of by block, right? So it's kind of, it works for better or for worse, mostly for worse. It does work that way.
Yeah, 100%.
Good answers. One more greater Chicago area related question. You guys have some friends in town for a day or two. What's the top, you can only get this in Chicago area food/eatery you're going to take visitors to for like a great meal, great experience?
Let's see. Oh gosh, what's the burger place?
Kuma's?
No, I mean, yes, you could go to Kuma's. It's like a French sounding, Al Cheval. We're going Al Cheval.
Oh, that one, yeah, that's good.
Al Cheval's the best. I feel like this is like the Michael Scott answer where I say like Sparrow or something.
You're going to try to convince us about deep dish pizza. We don't want to hear it.
I would take you to a street festival. You come in the summer, there's street festivals every weekend, and they have vendors, and then you can eat as much different shit as you want. But usually after a street festival, you Polish food, Chicago-style pizza, tacos, more tacos, lots of tacos, hot dogs, and you can eat all that stuff at a street festival. And that is the best way to enjoy Chicago in the summer by far.
Now I'm hungry again, even though I already ate dinner. I think I could squeeze another one in. I do like Kuma. I have been to Kuma, Sean, in Chicago, but they also opened one up in Denver where I am. So yeah, I haven't been to the Denver location yet, but I do want to check it out. We have a list of all the like metal themed bars and restaurants we're working our way through them.
All that satanic stuff. See?
Uh-huh. Yes. Last question. What would be your dream project to make? Like film, comic, novel, whatever art form you want. Is there a genre or a particular time period or style or something that you just had in your head that you want to get out there for the world to see?
Yeah. I mean, my dream, there's a script that I have that I would like to also direct. My dream has always been to write and direct. And it's a World War I period horror movie. It's about, kind of ties to our world, but also is about, beginnings of horror. It's kind of like an unofficial-ish adjacent Universal movie. But I would love to do it. It's like $2 million. So if anybody's listening, it's $2 million. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing, it's weird. I've never really been like Tim said, like having the pitch, like I don't want to remake Happy Death Day. Like I don't want to, like that's never been, I love the movie, but it's never been an appeal. I don't really have that. Like, I don't want to make Halloween 14, I would, I'm sure they'd pay really well, but like, I don't really have that burning kind of sense. Like it's always like, and I think I might be wrong. Do I think Tim would agree? Like, just want to do my own thing. That's what inspires me and gets me going the most.
Yeah. I mean, to some degree, I think I've done all the shit I want to do. So it's like, I don't have like a big dream one, but I did really like working on Revealer. I'd like to do something like this again, just like and then actually be able to go to set instead of being stuck at home with an unvaccinated 2-year-old. But yeah, I mean, just like working on a movie, but not a big movie, and like being able to hang out with Luke and Mike and do this kind of fun jam kind of thing. I would like to do that again, but I don't know what project. I don't care. Whatever. Doesn't matter.
Well, we can't say too much, but I feel like that's going to happen again for you guys sooner than later.
Let's hope.
We're excited to possibly jump on the bandwagon of you three, and
fingers crossed.
And for the budget, like if you hire comic guys, like we just do things fast and we don't complain. So you just like cracks out. We're so beaten. We're so destroyed by working.
Yeah. I just like $10 and a carton of cigarettes as payment. I don't even smoke, but I'm like, yeah, I'll take it.
Well, but you can trade those. Michael knows.
Yeah, you trade those.
Exactly. Is this in prison?
It kind of is a prison. If you talk to people who've been in the comics for long enough, they'll tell you. It's like
it totally works.
Yeah.
That was the end of the rapid fire 15. You guys aced it, even though there's no points and none of it was graded. But we appreciate those answers for sure. Again, we want to stress, as you're hearing this, it's maybe a few days before and it may already be there, but June 23rd, Revealer is on Shudder. Please check it out. Tweet about it. Talk about it with your friends. Tell them to watch it. It's a fun ride. We'll get into it more with Luke about the lighting and the score and all the aspects of it with the actors as well. But these two hatched this idea in a pinch because they don't complain. They're just doers. They know how to get it done. And we look forward to the stuff you got coming down the pike too. Anything you can talk about that's public yet as far as like a comic project or anything you guys want to promote?
I have a book monthly comes out called West of Sundown. It's essentially a Western with Universal monsters kind of. And issue 3 comes out next week. I think it's really good. You should check it out. It's from Vault Comics and should be out. 30 should be out the week before Revealer is out, I believe.
I'll plug that I hate Tim for coming up with the idea before I could. It's a great comic. It's just a brilliant comic. I mean, obviously my wheelhouse, but Lord, is it good. Great art from Jim Terry, our mutual friend. And this is a great book. I've got also from Vault, Barbaric Returns. We got a new story coming out in July that leads into the next story arc, the next volume, which is Axe to Grind. If anybody reads it knows there's a character named a sentient axe named Axe. Yeah, it's going to be a fun stretch of Barbaric. The comic is nuts, gleefully nuts. And this volume 2 actually takes it up a notch. So I'm pretty pumped.
Yes, all of that we will link to at paperstreetpodcast.com. There'll be some show notes. We'll link you guys to their socials, their websites, and some of the books you can get, which are all aces. Everything I've read by these gentlemen, I'm a fan of. I literally just bought Black Star Renegades and We Are Mayhem hardcovers, so I can read that because just reading the pitch of that, Michael's certainly in my sci-fi wheelhouse. I have told Tim already his Grayson stuff, his Dick Grayson books, I'm a very big fan of. So these guys are fantastic people. If you don't know anything about comics, trust me, these guys are like rock stars in that field. Like everybody everybody knows their name if they know anything about comic books. So fan of theirs, fan of their work. So excited to have Paper Street's logo on top of Revealer. Again, as of June 23rd on Shudder. Definitely check this movie out. We are proud of it. We are proud of that bisexual lighting. Whether it's intentional or not, we don't know. We'll talk to Luke about that. But again, thank you both so very much for the time. Michael Moreci, Tim Seeley. Again, paperstreetpodcast.com will have some links to all their various endeavors. But gentlemen, yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a blast.
Thanks so much. And hopefully you brave the weather. Storm has passed. Now you got the heat. So
yes, they braved a tornado to be here to talk to us. So we appreciate that as well.
It was very heroic.
We braved a tornado siren.
Same.
It was very loud.
Yeah, true.
But we appreciate the time, gents. Thank you.
All right. Take care.